Welcome, listeners, and welcome to Cathy Waterman. Uh, Thank you for taking the chance. What made you want to show up on the Fuck the Silos podcast here?
Oh God, I don't even know what the acronym was. I'm like, okay, I like Lawrence Yang. I'm just gonna do this. And I met your Shamila, and you guys are married, right?
That's
Are you
right.
guys?
That's right.
Okay,
You
that's
you
what I
met her.
thought.
Sorry. What? Go ahead.
That's what I thought, but I just it's kind of making one of those assumptions. Yeah, I met her at her leadership class.
Yes, that's right. I think it was somewhere
Yeah.
in eastern Alberta. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Very far.
Yeah. Well, it was called like Eagle something Ranch. Is that right?
Eagles Nest Ranch. It was far. I went up with a couple other ladies that year, and we ended up in Saskatchewan actually by accident, and found our way back around into Alberta. So
You accidentally
yeah,
went to a different
yeah,
province. That's
a little
fantastic.
traumatized actually.
Ooh, yes,
Let's do that again.
yeah, and that's kind of why how we got connected. I had made a post. I think was it about when I'd met Gabor last week.
Yes, that's what it was.
I think that
Yeah.
was on a Thursday, and I posted it on my Instagram or my stories that I got to hang out with him for, briefly, and that was awesome. And it resonated with you.
It really did. I'm a
Yeah.
little jealous that I've been on his website. I'm a little jealous that he doesn't offer his compassionate inquiry certification to non-health care folks like myself. But yeah, I found him by a kind of, I guess nothing's ever by accident, but I found him about a year ago from a friend and instantly was attracted to him and his message.
Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, he's been at this work, this trauma-informed teaching for so long now. I think it's over 20 years since he wrote his first book, around that, and I'm still just diving into them, still just getting to know them. I had made a statement in our Instagram chat that my first question for you would be, what is your definition of fun? So let's let's start there. What is your
Gosh,
definition?
at this age, my definition of fun probably go with my gut. My husband and I own a boat, and so fun for us is going out on the boat, like pushing off the dock, getting out of the ocean, and then the rest is history. So
Wow, wow.
yeah,
What bodies of water are you most frequently at? Where's the boat moored?
we moored in Ladner at Captain's Cove,
Hmm.
and more times than not, we're just in the Gulf Islands. It's closest, just across the Georgia Strait. Once a year, we didn't go this year, but from 2 years previous, we go to Desolation Sound. So it's a full day getting there, and then once we're there for a couple of weeks.
Is Desolation Sound is such a cool name? Is Desolation Sound nearby, like Seattle or something, or where is that?
No, way the other way. So we're talking about past Powell River, keep going. Like,
Oh,
yeah,
oh,
yeah.
okay. Do you ever cross go south with your boats?
We haven't, and only because I heard it's a wonderful experience, and I've also heard that our Canadian waters are better. A lot
Oh,
of American boats actually come our direction because our waters are better.
kind of like the
We
water's more still. It's not as stormy.
I guess, just from a nature standpoint. So my husband and I went to Alaska this year in May, with some friends, and don't get me wrong, it was absolutely stunning. A lot of the shoreline though was very comparable to what we have already here in BC. So, not certainly taken away at all. It was absolutely stunning, great experience. I think, maybe someone who lives in Phoenix or Saskatchewan or somewhere, I don't know, there's a lot of people on our cruise that was from the UK. They would have they would not experienced something like this. I mean, we've got amazing fishing, we've got amazing mountains and oceans and nature. Like we don't have to go that far to see an eagle in the sky, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
but
I
yeah,
see.
we love fishing. Fishing's so much fun. Could do
Hmm.
that all day long. Yeah.
What is it about fishing? Like some people are like, fishing's boring. What makes fishing fun?
I think it's one, being on the ocean, you're in the middle of nowhere, and being still. And I think the hope or the anticipation of a fish catching your line.
Mm.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of a just being present with
Oh,
nature,
yeah.
and
Hmm.
the quietness that appeals to
Yes.
you. And
Yes.
then and when the fish comes, does it automatically mean like food and sustenance to you? Is that what it means, or
No, it's actually fun. Like what
it's like,
happens is the adrenaline kicks in.
oh, it's like a struggle. It's like the chase,
Yeah, like
the
you
hunt.
get the fight. Yeah, like it's not even. My husband finally made me bonk the fish because he said, if you're gonna catch, you're gonna have to bonk it, right? I'm like, okay, fine. But it's not none of that stuff. It's not about the sustenance piece. It's about the excitement and the thrill of this unknown. And then once the fish catches it and your rod goes down, the rod tip goes down, it's game on.
Wow.
It's
So it's
fun.
Kathy the fish bonker. Got it.
Definitely not the bonker, rather be the catcher. Somebody else can bonk it.
So now that we know what your definition of fun is, tell us a little bit more about yourself. It sounds like you live in British Columbia.
Hmm.
I actually did
Yeah,
not know that you and Sharmila had gone to
it's
uh,
okay.
training together, which is awesome. Great news.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, how do you usually introduce yourself when you do to strangers?
Gosh, you know, sometimes I chuckle at the question because I'm older and I could tell so many different versions of my entire life story, right? I would say today, just from more day-to-day conversations, I'm busy in building classes right now in the personal development space. So a lot of the times I usually just start from probably the last year, and 34 years in the insurance sector, spent a lot of time, all those years in employee benefits. And I really understand a lot about not just insurance in general, but, the dental and health stuff. I worked probably 14 years total in the disability claims department, know a lot about people off work for multiple reasons. Um, Diagnosed and some of them really undiagnosed and off work, unfortunately. And and the sales side, once I moved in the sales side, the last just over a decade, promoting benefits and then a lot of the wellness piece. And so now I've left that industry, I spend my time going to that industry in hopes that they might look at personal development, personal growth classes as a wellness, as a lifestyle piece that I do think society's missing.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I've asked you to introduce yourself, and you've gone right away to what your mission is, what your cosmic
Yeah.
mission is. It's to help people to
Yeah.
develop, to break through their limitations. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. Interesting where I went, right? Because I can probably tell you like a lot of personal things too. And I'm like I said, I'm an open book if you want to go there. I got 4 kids, 2 bonus, 2 biological, awesome husband, just all those other things too. So
Oh, that's awesome. It's rare these days that you hear like I got an awesome husband. I'm happily married. That's too it's not as common as we would wish. What is it that you would say keeps keeps a marriage sustainable, good? What is your pearl of wisdom for those trying to be married for a
you
long time?
know, God, we just came back from a wedding this past weekend too. And man, my husband and I kind of laugh. We felt a little old. Like these kids are like 30 and so madly in love and, crying with their vows and all these things. And, it really, you can really feel it. They really meant it. And not to suggest at all anyone ever enters into marriage to divorce, right? And so my husband and I are both divorcees. We're remarried, and about a year into our marriage, we did come across personal development classes, and we do live the lifestyle. And I do believe that um, a lot of love and care, respect, kindness goes into a relationship. A lot of, um, I think the respect piece being that giving each other space, respecting each other's space emotionally, and then not taking things personally is big. We're not two halves making a whole. We're two wholes coming together with very, very different outlooks in life, opinions, beliefs, values, a lot of different things. And if, like, I wouldn't say we're 100% aligned on all those things, and we very much respect um, each other's opinions. We don't agree all the time. That's totally great because we have two different opinions. I don't know, and I said this to someone earlier today. I don't know that I would ever say we fight. Well, we probably have fought before in the last, because we've been together 14 years now. We probably have had some arguments, right? For the most part, I honestly think we disagree. I don't really like to call it arguing or fighting. We disagree because we come with different opinions. We're both very strong-willed and very passionate about our belief systems. And so it's holding the space and being open to each other's ideas, energies, emotions, not making the person bad or wrong, very important, right? And you know what? Stuff happens, and if I end up making him wrong or bad, or, put him in the doghouse or like whatever, we get over it. We get there and we get over it. So yeah, I don't know, I don't know if that helped at all answer you, but it's work. It takes work, right?
What I hear you saying is being present, suspending judgment, really listening, staying curious, and then respecting boundaries and respecting space.
Mm-hmm.
And I hear you saying, I love what you said about we're not two halves becoming one whole. We're actually two wholes
Mm-hmm.
meeting together and making the best of what we can do together as partners. That speaks to me
Mm-hmm.
of like intentionally avoiding codependency. Yeah.
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 Yes, for sure.
Hmm. That's some wisdom, Cathy. That's some wisdom. Um, you this is your second marriage, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Yeah. There's so many people going through really challenging marriages right now, and many people who have just recently divorced or called it quits. And I have many of them in my friend circle. They hold so much shame around
Mm.
a failed marriage. What do you have to say to them or for them, if anything? And if nothing, that's fine too.
Um, my gut wants to say it's sad that there are so many that are quote unquote failed. Um, I was just talking to a lady, messaging her this morning. She's going through a divorce herself, and we know, you know, other people as well. I I'm sad when we look at it as a statistic, no different from, again, mental illness, right? Like everything's put into a graph. So that part it saddens me. I don't know what the right answer is because I've said to people where I've joked, sometimes joking kind of makes light of things. And I joked with people and said, the thought of spending a lifetime with someone for, you marry at 25 or 30, you live to 80 or 90 these days, and you spend a lifetime with someone for 60 years. Wow, that's like a long time. That's a big commitment, you know. Um, Being divorced and remarried, I'm very clear. I'm more clear now than I was declaring my vows the first time to my first husband, what vows really mean. Like it's, I think the easy hardships are the ones that are glaringly obvious. I feel so glaringly obvious are the ones where something really tragic happens in the relationship. Whether it's life, death, lost job, I don't know, whatever, something's really obvious in your face that's really challenging, where that you go through that adversity. I think the vows for those of us who marry and we commit to each other are, it's the little stuff every day. It's the little stuff every day, whether it's, I don't know, wishing each other good morning, asking each other how your day was, um, dirty socks, dirty laundry, dirty dishes, just all these little things I feel that accumulate for some of us, that creates resentments and all these other things that, and then the old terminology about, then someone throws the kitchen sink at the other person and all hell breaks loose in the house. They were fighting over who knows what are they even fighting for. So I feel like the minutia of relationships is what challenges couples the most. And then leaning into that, choosing into that over and over again, purposefully deciding to recommit. Like every day, there's a saying, right? Commitment is a renewable resource, right? So if you've heard Kelly Cole say it before, and it's true. Commitment to anything and every single thing and every day is a recommitment. I don't have to commit to being a nice person to my husband today or tomorrow or later or tomorrow morning or whatever, right? And it's a recommitment. If you're being purposeful with it, right? If you're being mindful with it, if you're tuning in to that dialogue inside your brain, it's no different from, I remember a time, I probably don't do it as often as I used to, but come home after a long day of work, and this is probably before my now husband, I was divorced, probably really angry, dealing with kids, trying to get them straightened out from school after school and whatever, putting dinner on the table. And I'm just like angry at them, right? And then understand, and then of course all the kids are upset because you're angry and then causing trauma in the children. And then, taking time out to later say that, hey, you know what, guys, I'm sorry. Like, not an excuse, had a bad day, wasn't about you, right? I'm very mindful to do that because my parents never did that with me, right? So, back to your question with, was it why did I think there's so many or failed
No, my
marriages?
question was, there are people who are self-incriminating, blaming themselves for
Right.
a failed marriage, and then often they're actually wishing they could turn back time and could I have saved that relationship? And they're doubting themselves, and they're really stuck in that place. And that's, I'm for those of you listening, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about an amalgamation of many
Yeah.
people who I've come across. So yeah, what any words for them? Does that resonate with you?
Um,
Is that something you've come across?
I'm trying to think of any specific scenarios. I'll speak for I did not have any guilt with regards to, I think, a failed marriage. Um, Having said that, again, no one ever chooses into a marriage thinking that they're going to divorce. I don't know, I don't remember that I had guilt. I do remember that I was very aware of the decision I was making. I do feel if someone is in a space of feeling bad that they have a failed marriage, just like, where is it coming from? I feel like a lot of it comes from judgment, right? Judgment of self, and then of course fear of judgment from others. So whether it's the family pressure, friend pressure, society, all those things. And I believe the underlying thing to that would be the ego. We have a lot of ego attached to outcomes, results.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. There's that ego, how we look at ourselves, and looking at ourselves from the eyes of outsiders who really
Mm.
shouldn't matter as much, and us judging ourselves. I really think that is part of it. How does one get out of that? How does one get out into a more healthy perspective? Or how might you describe a more healthy perspective of self if it's not through the eyes of outsiders?
Well, yeah, have them talk about classes. Um, I would say support. It's gotta be support. Like that's the first thing that comes up for me. It's like, who are you surrounding yourself? What kind of noise do you want to hear? What, like music, like what kind of music do you want to surround yourself with? So, um, I was surprised when I told my family that I was separating from my first husband. Being Chinese, I totally thought it was going to be not, it just was not going to go well. It was going to, a lot of shame, right? Um, like you said, like around the judgments around failed marriage. Oh my God, we're so close to the family, also Asian family, and so embarrassing, right? And I was really surprised, pleasantly so. My family really rallied around me. Like my parents did not judge. They did not say anything that was judgmental or hurtful or caused any sort of that feeling of I was a bad daughter or I failed them. Um, they actually really rallied around me, my brothers as well. So I was really pleasantly surprised, and that which was great. And I do know though from other people's experiences that those are huge factors. So I would say support is huge, and it doesn't necessarily mean a therapist support, and that's a great avenue, absolutely. It's your closest friends, your community. For some people, it might be a church. For me, I surround myself with people who, all of our friends have done personal development work, so we all speak the same language, right? They know more about me than my family does. That kind of relationship. So yeah, anyone who's experiencing that, find your people where you could ugly cry with, right? And love you enough to offer you the honest feedback with how you're showing up, what you need, what you don't need, that kind of stuff.
Thank you, Kathy. I've heard a lot of wisdom from you in this past 10 minutes. You started off with quoting Kelly Poulos saying, love in a relationship is a commitment, and that commitment is a renewable resource, something that we can choose into day by day with
Mhm.
our relations. And then I also heard you say that who we surround ourselves with is so important. The narratives that we keep hearing and exposing ourselves to can really be internalized by ourselves. And so if we're around people who are doing the work, the internal work, or have growth mindsets, or who have had the privilege of experiencing intimacy and vulnerability and safety together, what a wonderful thing. What a rare occurrence actually in society to have that. Like the personal development work that you're in. You talk explicitly probably in that work around courage and vulnerability, um, and you also do a lot of self-reflection on your own perspectives, your lenses, and your traumas. And you also spoke to your privilege of how you had a family who was really supportive of you in these times, and I'm sure you recognize not everybody's families have that
Mm.
capacity to be so kind. Um, but I also recognize in you that you're you have a lot of self-awareness as well, and also some intentional self-kindness, like being resilient to shame. There's like a shame resilience or something going on with you. Does that resonate?
Yeah, that hasn't always been me. Um, Definitely have grown up with experienced a lot of shame. Not being good enough, So there's always another kid that was better or smarter or better looking or just all these things. And I don't know if I could pinpoint a specific time. And something definitely has shifted with regards to, feeling, enough or worthy and not really, um, leaning into shame so much like I used to. I don't know if it's a wisdom thing, an age thing, or awareness thing. Um, and yes, I agree with you. I don't spend a lot of time there anymore. Yeah.
I think that's a big part of like how you interacted with me in the chat. Spoke of that. It spoke of a fun-loving confidence and a desire to give. Like I actually have no idea who you were before this, but that's how your messages came off. It came off like I've done some of this work, and you were really passionate about some of that trauma awareness stuff.
Mm.
Um, I've been grilling you for about 27 minutes now. I want to let you know that you're free to ask any questions and follow your curiosity at any time as well. So I hope you can take that however you want. We have about 30
Well,
minutes left.
I'll ask you a question too. So
Yeah.
what is it about Gabor Mate that,
Hmm.
you enjoy?
He speaks, he phrases and he explains trauma in a way that resonates with science as well as with my lived experience of trauma. So there's just really strong resonance. And he was one of the first people I know, first professionals I know to write about it with that vernacular that I was raised in the medical community. He's a family physician like myself, and he's been through his own trauma healing as myself. So there's so much resonance because as a family physician, I get intimate perspectives into so many lives on a regular basis. And so many people are carrying wounds, and some of them are aware that they're carrying wounds, and some of them are not aware that they're carrying wounds and that those wounds are actually psychically preventing them from moving forward in their lives. And some of them, for many of them, preventing them from self care.
Mm.
And sometimes this woundedness, I guess, because the woundedness serves them. It gives them a reason of why they're not succeeding in their lives. They hold on to that woundedness, and then their coping strategies are often self deleterious, often like self
Mm.
harming coping strategies with substances, with pornography, with um, sexual addictions, with um, all of these other coping strategies that are generally not good for your spirit. And so they hold themselves back in life from self actualizing. And Gabor gives a language to all of that. He also gives language to how these types of psychospiritual wounds can also manifest in physiologic and immunologic outcomes. So autoimmune diseases, autoimmune
Mm.
symptoms. Um, and in my life as a family physician, not understanding boundaries, as a child, I had, um, uh, you know, tra- trauma, as many do. We have parents who are unaware of their own trauma, and as they're parenting, they inadvertently transmit the trauma downwards to their children, and not having real awareness of that, of how my boundaries were being encroached, I also perpetuated um, boundary crossing in my own life, in my own relationships and stuff. And a lot of that was overreaching or trying to rescue people. So inadvertently trying to seek my own self worth through functioning as an overworking physician, for example. So uh, when I met with Gabor last Thursday, it was with a group of physicians, and Dr. Mate was asked to speak to us about the concept of compassion fatigue. And he actually said compassion fatigue is a fallacy, that when we're truly being compassionate, um, there's actually no fatigue to be had. He said that what we're often doing is we're aiming compassion outwards, but we're not allowing us to turn our compassion towards ourselves. We're not allowing ourselves to be kind to ourselves enough, and then so that it becomes less sustainable. So that was one of his concepts, and he also spoke to how so many of us workaholic physicians are doing it because we're trying to fight for or prove to ourselves our self-worth. And why are we doing that? Why is our self-worth kind of reduced? Often it's the narratives that we've inherited from the traumas that we've experienced. He said that trauma is not what happens to you, it's what happens inside of you because of what happened to you. So I think that trauma shifts the narrative regarding our identities. It kind of mars or distorts our identities of being whole and worthy. And so then most of our trauma motivated survival instincts are to, I don't know, overweigh that trauma without resolving that trauma, keeping the trauma, but trying to compensate for the trauma. And sometimes that looks altruistic. Sometimes it looks narcissistic. Yeah. Yeah. So thanks for asking.
Yeah.
A lot of that teaching resonates. One of the really long words that Gabor uses in his writings is psychoimmunoendocrinology. Psychoneuroimmunoendocrinology. So there's a psychological component or a psychic component, which sometimes denotes psychospiritual, but usually it's just psychological. So there's a cognitive narrative. Neuro, meaning neurologic components are in there. Immuno, meaning there's immunologic components like our immune system, and then endocrinological, which means hormonal systems are involved. Super long word, but he's pretty much saying that our old bodies are linked and that we cannot compartmentalize our bodies like allopathic medicine, Western medicine has been trying to do for ages, because things are challenging when you integrate them. So we try to break them up for easy understanding. But sometimes when we segment or silo parts of the body, we lose the concept of the whole. And I think in the circles that you work in as a coach, right? You sometimes work as a coach. Yeah. I think you actually have that step back approach, and you probably see more of the holistic approach to wellness.
I work on it for sure. I follow this one artist on Instagram. I don't remember if I sent it to you. She draws, I think it might be a guy. He draws images about a heart and a brain and associating the two. And I wrote about this actually. I don't know if it was on Instagram or it was on LinkedIn. And what I said was, I feel like we're spending so much time taking time out of our brain because everyone's burnt out, they're frying their brain and they're stressed out. And you gotta manage your self-care, you gotta unplug, you gotta go into nature and refill your heart, refill your soul. And the thing is though, everything happens in our mind first, and actually they're interconnected. So to love someone isn't just a feeling. It actually stems from your brain first. And so, and I feel a little bit like maybe that's why part of, so many reasons why, but a reason why society, generalizing, it has suffering is because we're trying so hard to segment it. The heart is here and the brain's over there. And so, like you said, where Gabor talks about, no, it's all interconnected. Like so many people are having hormonal issues, not because they're hormonal, but because there's something else that's not in balance. So whether it's their immune system or whatever, all these other functionalities in your body and your brain and in your soul and your mind, like you said, spiritual too, right? So in your soul. And maybe we're just overthinking, we're overstimulated. Everyone's just got to shut off the computers or like all these things. Knowledge isn't power. or it is power, but be careful, you can use it for good or evil. So how are you gonna use your power? Are we feeding our mind, body, and soul with the right information, with the right food, with the right environment? Like, I'm very much into that space of the holistic space right now, right? We're cutting out a lot of chemical things in our diet because there's so much in our foods that are wrong, that are not good for us, like pesticides and GMOs, and which again then impacts the piece of immuno the immune system and the hormonal, the endocrine, right? Am I getting that right? If I know what endocrine means, okay.
Yeah, and endocrine or endocrine, it means the hormonal system. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, yeah, that could be just a totally different tangent in itself, just with regards to how we heal our body, how we treat our body, feed our body, just all of those other things.
Yeah, when you were speaking, it jogged a recent narrative that I've been exposed to that really resonated. Uh, I was raised in a way, I was raised by a physician, a physician who was very ambitious, who is very ambitious. And just like most parents, he focused really hard on academic performance. The implicit values that were transmitted to me were that developing the intellect and developing the academic is the number one priority. That is where my value stands. My ability to be intelligent, my ability to use that intelligence and that academic knowledge to serve others, that's where my value stands. And a different narrative recently that I've been trying to embody is that my value is is in my soul, is in my being, and it is less to do with my academic knowledge. It's almost nothing to do with my academic knowledge. That this brain of mine is super powerful, but it is not my power. It is a tool. It is a tool of the soul. And the soul may be something that I might not be able to map physically onto my body, but my soul is my existence, is my essence, my consciousness. And the brain is a tool, but tools can be misused. Just like you said, we can use our tools for a lot of bad. We could allow this to take over and we can stay up in the head too much. But some people call it the heart space that we need to move into. Some people call it the soul space, the intuition space. And I've been recognizing that my formal education in medicine has pushed me to hyper focus on this area and has not allowed me to settle into some of the wisdom that exists in the rest of my body, in my physical body, in the somatics, uh, and also in the soul intelligence that really should be some of the driving factor. And I think each of us has an instinct and an intuition that when we are living in alignment with our soul, with our spiritual or cosmic mission, or our whatever we're supposed to be in, we can feel that. We might not be able to put words on that feeling or how that feels, but I think we each know it. And when we're living in that congruence, that authenticity, sometimes our best decisions are not made by calculating or analyzing probabilities with this brain. Sometimes it comes from just from the heart space, maybe. So that's been something that's newish for me, even though I'm approaching where I might call myself old. You've done it 4 times, by the way, or 3 times this. So it's something I'm learning, that I know a lot of people and many other cultures, they follow that wisdom probably from the get-go. And I'm sure some of it was in maybe the First Nations or indigenous peoples, their cultures, where maybe they understood this integrated way of living.
Mm.
And colonization has probably messed it up for them. And my medical education is a colonizing and militaristic reduction of what culture could or should be. So yeah, trying to unlearn some of that hyper intellectualism and getting back into what's right and what's authentic and stuff. That's been a big part of my own healing from a traumatic system and culture. Mhm.
Something you said earlier when we were talking more about Gabor Mate and what drew you into him, in addition to meeting him, was the compassion piece, right? And he was working with you folks with regards to being practitioners and being compassionate. And what I was wondering in my head when you were speaking about that was when we move to a place of I have to, because you feel like you have to because you're a physician, you're supposed to, like you're supposed to be compassionate and heal them and fix them and be there for them because who else is going to? And instead of doing that and then moving to a place of I get to, and then suddenly it feels more freeing. Like it suddenly doesn't feel as heavy. Like you're not carrying this massive like weight over your shoulder, like, and then bringing all that stress home and carrying all of that weight.
That resonates, Kathy. Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely a risk. A risk of being hyper intellectual. We forget because our brains are limited, and we forget the capability of those other humans that we're working with, the capability of them to heal themselves, and the capability of others in their network to support them. And we can become egotistical and tunnel visioned such that we believe that as a physician, I'm responsible for this person's health. And if I'm not there, people die. That's a very egotistical thing. Their life depends on me. But we can almost get into that unfortunate and silly space easily. It's tricky, especially when we work at a pace that outpaces our healthy rhythms of our body, and where we're giving up sleep, where we're using caffeine every day or other stimulants in order to do stuff. And yeah, we can lose sight of
Mm-hmm.
our responsibility, which simply just ends where we show up as our best self. By healing myself and coming as my best self, using my whole self in my work in a way that's sustainable, that's the best way that I can actually bring helping or bring healing to this particular relationship. That wasn't taught in school, that wisdom.
Yeah, yeah.
As a coach, have you done training around these types of boundaries of what you're responsible for, what somebody else is responsible for? Is that part of your training?
Oh, I think back to some of the years being involved in this now. Um, I would say yes. There's nothing specific going to formal school and having something in a textbook style. It's very much experiential learning. Uh, yeah, and I'm gonna say that most of what I learn um, is through my community. It's through the relationships that I have. Um, my closest friends, again, we all have done experienced personal development work. We just have this constant feedback, dialogue around any subject. Like I could just be talking freely about a really crappy day with a friend, and he would he would he would say, well, what I hear you say is, da 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 da, and give me the direct feedback. And then I am very self-aware. So I do then take that and be like, oh yeah, okay, right. I see that. I could have worded this differently. I could have positioned this differently. No, that was all ego. Um, no, I overstepped a boundary, or I can do better, or this was great, or that wasn't. Um, I don't know that, it's funny. I almost feel a little bit sheltered because I am so fortunate to have people like that around me that I don't know what it's like outside of it a little bit. Does that sound, I don't know, this sounds naive.
No, no, it doesn't. It sounds that your intuition has brought you in community, into relationship, into community where there are people who can give you the stuff straight up, who can be frank with you and let you know when when you might be messing up. And the
Yeah.
fact the fact that you have those those relationships, that's a massive privilege, and it's also an ode to your efforts in choosing into those relationships. Yeah,
Yeah. I
I
remember there
think.
was a time I invited somebody out to like an information session, and not really close to this guy, honestly. He was a great man. Met him through, I think, like, one of my kids' social or sports games or something. And he said, I just gotta know, Cathy, like, why did you invite me to come? And a couple things. Not a lot of people, first of all, ask me that. They just, out of politeness, goes, "Oh, okay, I'll come." Just being totally polite. And the other thing is, he was so honest to ask me that. I was very honest to give him the feedback. I'll admit, I probably wouldn't normally, with someone I don't know very well. I gotta sometimes figure out the lay of the land. And I did tell him very direct feedback, and I told him, I said, well, I invited you to come to this presentation because you don't look happy. My experience of you is that you're not happy in your life. And he was so appreciative for the honesty of what I experienced from him. Because we're all energy, right? I can most times feel what someone else is experiencing. I might not know exactly what it is, right? But I can tell it's like, hey, something's going on. Are you okay? Right? And so yeah, he really appreciated the honesty and the feedback. I raised my children the same way. My daughter, she is in third year psychology as well, so it kind of helps. But I teach her this: care enough about the person who's in front of you to offer feedback. Like, it doesn't have to be hurtful, honest, loving feedback. It comes from care and it comes from love. And she actually said to me was, Mom, there was a girl I met when I was 17, and I realized that if I didn't give her feedback back in high school, she would have never, she would not have had the opportunity to look at it and grow differently. So if you don't offer somebody feedback and then meet them 3 years later, and you're not surprised that maybe they hadn't changed, or there was something that you didn't sit well, that about that person didn't sit well with you, like, got to look at an ownership piece on that as well. You have an opportunity to care enough to offer that person feedback. It's not really, I don't call it advice. Advice is like telling somebody what to do. Feedback is just expressing an experience with somebody. Right?
So it's like, Cathy, can I have your permission to offer you some feedback?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I would say yes.
Hmm.
If I'm really pissy with you, I'd be like, no. But
And
yes,
that's
I
fine.
can.
And that's fine too. We have to,
Yeah.
when someone says no, no means no. And then
Yes.
it's not the right time. It doesn't mean the right time might not come in 30 minutes or the next day.
Yeah.
But we can, I love that. We can offer feedback more often, and that feedback is a gift. It's a gift of perspective. It's a gift of community. It's a gift of another way of looking at things, because we all need that. We can only see what's in front of us. It's hard to see what's in behind us.
So on the
That's,
flip side, though, when you look at it, it's like there's going to be times when you will consciously say to yourself, I'm not offering this person feedback. And it could be for multiple reasons. They're not wrong reasons. It just, and it, to sum it up, and it sounds so unkind, but to say that I don't care enough to offer you feedback, it could be so many things. I'm in a rush. I'm on a time schedule. I don't have time right now for this. I've done this with you before. I know you're not open. You're not in the right mood. So many reasons why you're not going to offer somebody feedback, right? So it's not wrong if you decide you're not going to offer feedback, and there's an opportunity there if you so choose it. Just be aware though why it is that maybe you don't want to, or you don't.
that's lovely. We have 10 minutes left. I'd like to start off one narrative before we close. Um, you mentioned quite a few times, or at least twice, about energies. Um, Explain. What do you mean by that?
Hmm. Um, we all we're all energy. So what I mean is, So I can sense energetically how you're feeling.
Like over Zoom, you can sense my energy.
I believe I can. Yeah, I do think I can. And I feel like energetically you've been prepared, you've been playful, you've been attentive. Um, and unless you got an awesome game phase, I don't sense that you have any um less than energy. Like I don't think you got in a fight with a wife. I don't sense any of that stuff. I feel like you're in a really actually good space today. And I feel like I don't know if it's practice or just natural intuition. I have been told that I'm pretty intuitive. I don't know though if it's a natural born thing or it's practice. And I do think, well, maybe it is practice. I do think if you pay attention, you can sense people's energies. And then if you do listen to other people like, Joe Dispenza and those sort of things, then now you're talking quantum stuff, which that's well beyond me. Um, I can't even go there. It's just so far beyond. I do believe there's something more there. It's like from a spiritual and that energy field space. Um, and so not just I can sense other people's energy. I'm very attuned with my own. Um, and it could be feedback. It could actually be the result of, my husband comes home and that's a direct feedback. Then I know it's like, oh, okay, I got to check into my own energy because I'm not in a good space right now, or like whatever that might be. Yeah, like I walk in the, like jumping on this, with you today, energetically, I knew that I was excited about it. I know what I want to bring, you know, honestly, like you've energetically created a great space. I've not been, I didn't come in nervous, for example, right? So it's a little bit of a dance, right? And so energetically, you'll notice too, if you go walk into a room, and so maybe the last time you walked in the room was your event last week with Gabor Mate, there's people you attract and there's people you don't. Sometimes you literally can see someone bump into them 2 or 3 times during the day, and you're in this conference for the entire day. So it's 8 hours, 10 hours. And for some reason, there's no attraction or pull for you to go to that person. And it doesn't mean anything, again, good, bad, right, or wrong. And energetically though, you're sensing that person's not for you, at least maybe not today. Whereas other times there's a natural energetic attraction, whether it's the intellect or the fun energy or whatever it is, there's energetic attraction, right? Or detraction, the whole thing. The opposite. So
Have you always been in tune with your own energy or in tune with others' energy? Is that something that when you were 5 years old, you could feel it? Or is it something that, I don't know, came up last?
yeah, I feel like if I were to look back in time, I feel like I've been always I always understood there's probably something there energetically, and it's certainly not. And well, I didn't understand it was energy. I thought it was more feelings. So I can feel something was not right, or I can feel that somebody else was reacting or behaving or responding to me. I don't know if I understood that at that age, at a younger age. I would say maybe not as young as 5, but maybe 10, and then into high school and then in my 20s. I identify and associate with it more now, um, probably the last 10 years. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it all resonates. Everything you said resonates with me as well. It's definitely something that deserves more study. I think some
Oh,
people call it interpersonal intuition. Some people call it emotional contagion or emotional sensitivity. But yeah, it's interesting. There is something else to be said about, as you said, we're energy.
well, maybe I would, if you're excited and interested to, like, spend some time there. because it's not, I don't think it's practiced in the brain, right? So with you speaking about it earlier, where you spend a lot of time in your intellect because you spend a lot of time in school studying to be a doctor, and with your dad, getting you into that space with getting you ready, maybe into that academia. Because I think energy lives more in the beingness, in the emotional space, than it does in the intellect. I think there's a scientific piece to it for sure, if you wanted to go study it from the
Mm.
scientific intellect space. And if you were to let go of the intellectual piece to it and lean into it, probably a great practice. It could be kind of fun. Just sit outdoor at a cafe, grab a coffee, and just people watch. My
Hmm.
husband and I actually used to do that earlier on when we were dating, and just sit out there in a coffee shop. Actually, we didn't even know what we were doing, but we sit out there at a coffee shop, and we could see which couples that walked by were probably not talking to each other because they weren't talking to each other, but also energetically, you can see in the body language. One was walking 2 feet in front of the other. They were 2 feet apart. Their body language was just stiff. And it's more, so energy has, I would say, just having said that, is it's energy and the attachment probably to the physical beingness, right? Because it does show. If you're happy and lighthearted, you probably have a little bounce in your step, right?
Yeah, it's all integrated. Yeah, how
Yeah.
you're feeling in your spiritual consciousness being will show in your physical
Mm.
mannerisms. Yeah, and it shows in your muscles, in your chest, in your breathing. Yeah,
Yeah,
you have
yeah,
something.
breathing, sweating, like upper lip shaking could be anger or nervousness, but yeah, that's all energy coming out, right?
Mhm.
I have a question for you.
Yes, this is the last one, Kathy. Then we got to hang it up. We've had a lot of fun.
Okay,
This is my definition of fun, by the way. Go ahead.
that was my question. I was gonna ask you, what's your definition of fun?
It's connection. It's connection and seeing the beauty in other people. Um, and you've shown me so much today, and I thank you so much. Yeah, you're very thoughtful, and I can see you come from a lot of compassion. It's clear that you've done the work, and I'm stoked to have met you and to have connected. I'm gonna excitedly go and tell Sharmila that I met you, and thank you for your
Thank you.
time.
Thank you. It's been fun.
I'll stop the recording now.